right, we are good to go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Thor. My name is Kristin Casasanto. I'm the Program Director for External Engagement at Olin College of Engineering, just outside of Boston. And I coordinate workshops and collaborations between Olin faculty and other educators seeking to redesign their curriculum. So that's me. And now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Tyra Hildebrand from Milwaukee School of Engineering for her intro.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristin. So I'm Tyra Hildebrand. I've been working at MSOE almost 1.5 years, and my role is essentially the Assistant Director of Curriculum Integration. Although in the past few weeks, we've all shifted to become a really spectacular teaching and learning department for MSOE. So the CREATE Institute, which includes about 5 people, we basically, with the help of faculty and staff, were able to quickly train. We held 26 trainings in Blackboard and in Teams to get people online. So I just want to be clear, I'm not an engineer, and the work that I've done prior to MSOE was really focused on running teacher education programs in K-12. So that's kind of the piece I bring to the table. So again, we're really excited that you're here. We know you could be doing all kinds of other things, so thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it off to Dave.
Hey, I'm Dr. David Howell. If Tyra's not an engineer, I'm kind of an anti-engineer. I like to get students to think in ways that are outside of the engineering box. And certainly, the experiences that we've had taking MSOE into a completely online environment have required all aspects of the human psyche, especially when it comes down to basic human communication. I work with Tyra in the CREATE Institute as the Associate Director for Faculty Development. I've also been faculty in the Humanities Department for about 16 years.
All right, Kristin, kick us off.
Great. So first, thanks everyone for joining us. And if you have questions that you would like to ask, you can type them in the chat window. We're going to be monitoring that and calling out those questions as we go along. We'll also have time after each segment for a little Q&A, so you can certainly chime in at that point. So my participation in this call comes from 2 perspectives. One, in collaboration with Olin faculty, and also from my own experience in a blended online graduate program at Northeastern University, for which student engagement was a primary design priority. So first, I wanted to share a few things about what Olin has been doing during our quite sudden transition to online instruction. We do not have an instructional technology department at Olin, so faculty have had to kind of figure out these technology options on their own. We do rely heavily on our own institutional license for Zoom, but there was a lot we realized we didn't know. And so we also hired an instructional technologist and professor who taught 100% online to consult with our faculty, which was very helpful. And so the opportunity to collaborate with her and her own experiences as we were getting kind of ramped up very quickly was really beneficial to our student engagement, as well as to our curriculum conversion. Tools such as MS Teams and Slack have been helpful for building community, both within the classrooms and outside of the classroom. We have Slack channels for lots of different purposes. We have channels designed around topics of interest or community groups on campus, Slack channels for individual courses, as well as for faculty departments. And so we have encouraged use of communication within the Slack channels, and that's been a great kind of side communication that has kept everyone feeling engaged in the community. And so of course, when it's a Slack channel for a specific class or a specific department, that's even more focused, but that's been a great backbone to our kind of virtual digital engagement. Most of our Slack channels are open to faculty, staff, and students. So we do have this really great community dialogue going on much of the time. And so that's been very helpful as well to help people feel engaged, students as well as faculty. And of course, we cross-post content between email, our learning management system, and other tools to make sure that people are seeing important messages, whether it's deadlines, whether it's public health announcements and things like that. So of course, not one specific channel or tool is ideal, and we realize that, and there's no perfect magic answer to all of this. And so we have used multiple platforms to make sure that this information is being seen. And then just a little bit quickly about my own experience. So I was in a master's program that was a blended program. It was designed for student engagement online. And so, well, the learning management system was the foundation of the course, and documents and assignments residing within that. A lot of tools were used to then build on that. And so videos were recorded and posted for comment within the learning management system or on class wiki pages. The tool VoiceThread was used as a platform for virtual poster sessions, report outs, project presentations. VoiceThread allows for video or audio narration of documents and animations, presentations, videos and such. So students could present their work, and then where class members could then comment on their work. And so it was a great discussion platform asynchronously, because when students are in different time zones and are still contributing to a conversation, the VoiceThread platform accommodated that. And so you could see this kind of chain of comments and such, both in video, audio, and text. And so it was kind of multimodal, and it felt a little more engaging that way. And then we also used Facebook private groups, which if people are familiar with Facebook, it's a great tool for use within the education realm, especially when you can utilize the privacy settings to have just a private space for a particular class, private Instagram groups for casual class chat, sharing of anecdotal information. We used Twitter with hashtags to reference resources that we wanted to share with our classmates. And of course, live chats via Zoom or GoToMeeting were useful for those that could be available at the time. And even though very often in classes, you have students from varying time zones that can be vastly different, students became pretty flexible at their availability, which was great. And so we were more often than not able to get a lot of our class together and have that visual interaction. So those are just 2 points about my own experience at Olin College, as well as within the Northeastern University online system for student engagement. And I can tell you personally that the Northeastern, the very intentional student engagement design, I think worked really well. And I think recognizing the technology and tools that are out there, and that you don't have to use everything, but there are a couple things that you can overlap that really build on each other to foster student engagement. Just real quickly, did anyone have anything that they wanted to ask about? Any quick questions or comments if you've used any of those tools before we hear more about Tyra's experience?
Is there anything in the chat feature, Dave, that we want to address? Or are we good?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks, Kristin. Appreciate hearing your perspective. So first of all, again, I just want to thank everyone for being here. These are tough times, and I know that I kind of learned the hard way. The first probably 3 weeks, I was just stuck on my computer, and even though I was talking about self-care to my students, I was not actually practicing self-care. So we do need to step away from these computers from time to time, especially as the hours keep growing. So I do hope everyone is able to take a walk, take a break, because we know we're more efficient when we are able to take good care of ourselves. This is hard work, and everyone's disappointed with the current state of affairs. Sometimes every day gets harder and harder. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out. So I was able to jump into teaching a class this current quarter. It wasn't planned. It sort of came about just because there was a need. So our quarter started, our first week was face-to-face. And then the second week was canceled while we were trying to get all of our faculty on board. And then the third week we started online. So I actually had not actually met any of my students before. I had 20 students in a freshman speech class. So one of the things I did before we even started classes, I just sent out a Google Doc that just asked a little bit about their computer technology abilities at home, if they were concerned about anything, how excited they were about learning speech, you know, just a few little sort of get to know you kind of things. And then I think the first thing I did that was really helpful was I broke down the 20 students in groups of 5. So I have 5 groups of 4 students. And those groups we use in Blackboard for group conversation each week and also in teams. So our class traditionally met 3 times a week. And one of the things that came up really quickly at MSOE was, are we doing synchronous? Are we doing asynchronous? So there was some flexibility on the instructor's part on how to do that. So the way I proceeded was we kept 2 of our class slots, and then the 3rd class slot we're doing asynchronous. And that seemed to give them a little bit more flexibility in terms of that time frame. This is an 8 o'clock and a 9 o'clock a.m. class. So I feel like that was a good adjustment for them. The Teams works really well during our longer session. So one of the things I do is we might be watching a video, and then I want them to go into their team channel to discuss some questions just amongst the 4 of them, because I'm finding that when I have 20 students, they do not want to say anything. So they don't want to share their screen, which is fine because I totally get that. I love that Teams recently just came out with some new backgrounds for people to use so that their real background doesn't have to be shared. But they're not real interested in sharing their screen, but also speaking. So one of the things I did last week was I asked them in the private journal question that they have to do with me in Blackboard each week, what can I do to get more student engagement? I also asked, how do you think class is going? What do you think? What can I improve? So for me, it's all about building connections. And some of those connections are taking place individually in Blackboard because we have shy students. So sometimes students don't want to talk. So sometimes my strategy might be, well, I want to hear from someone I haven't heard from before, or let's start with someone in group 1. So that kind of helps me. The cold calling, I'm not a big fan of, but I did start doing that. And surprisingly, you know, I did give them the option, they can skip, but everybody did answer out when I said, hey, I haven't heard from Dave in a while. Dave, what do you think about this? And Dave, I know, hopefully will share out about his conversations. I think he's been a little bit better about being able to get people to discuss. So one of the other things is we always have a soft landing. So when we start class, we're always starting with like, hey, tell me in the chat feature, what was something fun you did this weekend? Or I stole from Dave, what's your favorite color? And then I had someone accumulate and tell us what the data was. We kind of needed to talk about things that were happening at MSOE because each week something was changing. So I asked about, what do you think about the pass-fail option? That was one of their journal questions. And that was tough because a lot of students really were going for that GPA. So a lot of the pieces for me is building community, knowing I'm here for them. Obviously, office hours are really key. I started to call them student hours. And now I need to think, and I'd love to hear from the group about how you're encouraging people to come into your student hours, because I'm not getting a lot of people. So, you know, those are just some of the things I did. I shifted an assignment and I made them work in pairs, gave them some class time to do that. I think one of the other things that I did was I just shifted the syllabus. So the traditional face-to-face syllabus definitely changed in the online setting. And I know a lot of us at MSOE were talking about how can we still meet the course objectives and maybe make things easier for the students in terms of reducing the frequency of assignments, or just thinking about how we can shorten things, because things are taking much longer for the students. That's definitely some of the things that they're saying. And we are also starting Monday with Monday Moments. So I'm putting one group in charge of starting us out for 3 to 5 minutes, sharing their favorite meme or their favorite video clip. I actually shared the Hamilton clip from Some Good News the other day, just to get them, I don't know, out of their minds for a second in terms of just starting class. So the soft landing, I think, has been really important in terms of trying to get more engagement in the class. And so those are just some of the pieces for me that I think I wanted to share out. I'd love to hear from other people in the group, because we do feel like the intellectual capital is already here. The 3 of us have no magic wands on this topic. So we'd love to hear from you if you want to share out some exciting strategies that you've used that we could also implement in our classes. This is just like my class. Nobody wants to talk.
Well, I'll jump in.
Okay.
I'm going to do something that I did on the very first day of my first online class, and that was try to humanize my experience. So the first thing I did for my class was I introduced them to my friend Rush. That's my dog Rush. And it was really fun because I got to
Can't
Hey,
hear.
About,
Can't hear.
We
What's
missed you. We missed
Oh.
you when you were showing us your dog. We couldn't hear your volume.
Okay, but I showed them my dog. I gave them a tour of my house. I tried to humanize the experience that I'm going through as a form of making connection with the students, because I think that it helped them understand that I'm struggling just the way that they're struggling, as a way of getting kind of communal empathy taking place. I explained to them that you know, I'm an introvert and I really enjoy spending time alone in my office as a way of kind of recovering from teaching on-site classes. But now that I'm at home with my family, there's not a lot of privacy. And that started up a conversation about the challenges of studying in online environments. Sometimes those those conversations took place in class. Other times they took place during office or student hours. But I've also just been having a lot of email exchanges with students. Yeah, my email's just really gone through the roof. And I'm really inviting that and encouraging that with students, because I'm telling them that they really I need to have a lot of one-on-one contact with them, but I need them to kind of push the envelope on that one. So I'm having a lot of success inviting them to engage me and communicate with me. The downside to this is that I'm really burning out at this point. I think that, to echo what Tyra said, I'm spending too many hours in front of the screen. And I'm trying to, before this call, I took the dog for a walk around the block, and that was very healthy. It's good to get outside. Good to get outside. But boy, by the end of the week, I'm really kind of punchy. So to echo Tyra's point, you know, the ability to engage in self-care enables me to have better energy for my students. We still have another 5 or 6 weeks at MSOE, and I want to enjoy them as much as possible, enable the students to learn from these courses as much as possible. But just making it a little, kind of playing off of the advantages of this online format. Like when I teach my speech class, we always applaud at the end of each presentation. So now I have to tell the students to unmute, and then everyone applauds at the same time. And it's kind of a fun way of using the medium, or just the chat feature. I don't know about the rest of you, but my students really love chat. They'll talk a lot more with me in chat than they will in a regular classroom. At the beginning of each class, I'll ask how they're doing on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is, I'm so euphoric because I slept through my first class, and now I'm fresh for this one. 1 would be, wow, another day facing the computer for another 10 hours. So it really kind of opens the door to those conversations. If a student writes down 10, I'll ask them, you know, Skylar, what's going on? Why are you a 10 right now? And then they'll be able to tell part of their narrative in terms of their ability to maintain self-health, if you will, during a time of global pandemic. It looks like someone has everyone sing happy birthday, the 2 of your students.
That was me. So when I asked about what did you do this weekend, someone shared it was their birthday, and then I realized we missed someone else's birthday, and so I said, okay, at the end of class, we're all singing. You got to do it. Of course, they all think I'm nuts, but you know, some of this stuff is just trying to be interesting and keeping them engaged. I worry that sometimes they just aren't there. They might be there by screen, but maybe they've walked away. But they all seem to be there. So yeah, I did make them all sing happy birthday.
And there's this technological challenge regarding showing their faces because a lot of the students don't have the bandwidth to handle all of that video interaction. So that's why they're not sharing their screens with each other, which is a challenge because I want to see them. I want to see them interacting with me. But a lot of the students are simply falling into a category where there's a lack of bandwidth, so they can't engage in the virtual medium as well as I can. That's just, I had to kind of adjust my expectations when I started teaching this in this type of an environment. Certainly during office hours, it's not a problem. So I'm really encouraging students to engage me in office hours. And MSOE is using Microsoft Teams, so I'm doubling down between my laptop and my phone so that I can engage in different classes at the same time in different Teams environments. Because there are some limitations to Teams. We're trying to figure out creative ways to work around those limitations.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing I wanted to add was that setting up really consistent structure for the class was really helpful. So it took me a little while, but eventually we were able to move to kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when the readings are due, when the video watching is due, when the blackboard's due, when the journal's due. And so that's really consistent. And I've been posting information in multiple places so that they don't have to keep searching for it. That's one of the pieces of feedback we get from the students, is that I'm chasing down 4 classes, everyone's putting it in different places. I just wish the faculty would really make it clear about the due dates and not just tell us the night before something's due. So I know that those really clear expectations, having it well organized in Blackboard or whatever your learning management system is, I think is really helping them engage with the course so that they don't have to spend that extra time to find stuff. So anyway, that's just one thing that I wanted to share out. But we want to hear more from you. Tell us about your experiences and your stories. What have you learned over the last 4 weeks?
So GF Halo in the chat room said that one student even shared her chicken with the class when everyone else was showing off their dogs.
Oh, I love it.
That's funny.
That's great.
You want to share with you?
Hey, this is Carl Hoover. I am from Clarkson and met a few of y'all at the Keene conference for the first time. So really value this discussion and also following the comments, love the human side. I actually had thought to include my dog and I love that idea. So I really appreciate that, Dave. I'm going to try that next. So just good discussion. And I shared a little video of something I tried this week where I had the students annotate the screen all at the same time. And that was an interesting little experiment in getting a little student engagement. It seemed to work well during the session. I don't know if y'all know that you can have the students can annotate, pick up a little marker just like you're drawing on the screen, and it worked well. I don't have too many other applications where I know that I'm going to use that, but where it came from was a place of trying to find a way to connect, because my classes right now are about this size, and this seems like the size where everybody kind of goes quiet and goes dark, and the real engagement has really happened in those, I have little small group sessions with maybe 4 or 5 students at a time. And that's when the students are really coming out and I'm able to interact with them. But, looking for ways to engage with them and looking also not just for student engagement, but faculty engagement and connecting with my peers as well and with things like this. So I appreciate the discussion. Just wanted to say thanks for it. And we're all in this together. So keep it up, everyone. I definitely feel the weariness coming on this week, and I'm looking forward to taking a break this weekend.
Thanks, Carl.
Carl, that was great. I really liked your point about faculty engagement, because I think faculty well-being is such a foundation to student well-being. And so we've been looking at faculty engagement as well, and our IT department has been dying to get us to adopt MS Teams for like 2 years now. And so in this whole, switching to virtual instruction, they've really taken the initiative in getting faculty and staff engaged through MS Teams. They've created different channels. There's a water cooler channel. There's a general information channel. There's, hey, did you see this and these, stats and this. And so people are posting, pictures of their dogs on Fridays and talking about how their weekend was on Mondays. And so it's really become a source of socialization through MS Teams for faculty and staff. I think it's gone a long way for kind of keeping everyone's momentum going digitally and virtually. So I like that. I think it's so important to engage faculty as well as students.
So in my department, the very first week, our department chair had a virtual happy hour. It was just a lot of fun, and it kind of gave everyone a chance to talk about something other than the pandemic or having to switch to online environments. But what was really fun for me was I had a number of colleagues in my department want to have just like a happy hour with Dave or happy hour with my friend Mark, where we could talk about things other than academics, because that's so much of what the conversation was the first 2 weeks that we made the transition to online. And like our students, I think we need to be able to have small talk. And certainly that's not afforded very often in our classrooms, especially in online, because we do have to get through so much material, and there are limitations to these online mediums. So I think once again, the office hour is a great opportunity for me just to go offline, go off topic, or just even ask students about stuff that's going on in the background. I was in a meeting today with some colleagues, and someone had a hula hoop in the background. And I said, hey, before the meeting gets started, can you show me how that hula hoop works? And it was just really a nice, light way of getting everyone's shoulders to drop a little bit. I mean, Kristin, I would ask you about those beautiful red flowers in the mirror behind you. What's that all about, right? And then we could have a conversation about something other than the hard work we're going through or the news that we're constantly consuming through media.
Actually, one thing that Ann Satterback from Duke University mentioned in a call I was on with her, which I thought was really kind of interesting, was she actually created in kind of similar vein to what you do at Olin with your ninjas in some way. She brought together 3 students from her class, and she uses them as kind of a guinea pig before she unleashes the next set of assignments to the entire group. So she gets some real feedback from real students as she's trying to transition some of these different assignments and different things to an online format. And she has, found that to be extremely useful, extremely helpful. Another thing I heard about from a colleague was, and this ties back to something that you just mentioned, Dave. I don't have firsthand experience about it, but seems like an interesting opportunity. Engaging alumni, that you are connected with to maybe host some of those more informal connections with your students that are going through your courses. So who are some of the rock stars that came through your courses in the near future, recently, maybe even still students in different areas, but, would they be interested or willing to host a students only office hour, if you will, to engage around some of the topics or areas that might be a little bit less, just scary, I guess, for some of the students to engage on topics that they might not want to engage with the faculty.
I was just going to pitch in that one of the things I said early on to my class was that we are not going to leave anyone behind. And so if you notice someone needs help, and I also just shared this with their peer group as well, that, help out, check in with your colleagues and your peers. I know that one of my students hasn't been attending class, so I checked in with him via email. I reported him to student services, so they would follow up with him. I'm going to be following up with him again. So just because we don't have that face-to-face, I feel like it's more onus on us to follow up with people. If they didn't get an assignment, there's a few people I just said, hey, I noticed you didn't do X, Y, Z. And, with the pass-fail, they might have just making that choice to not complete that assignment. But I know a few people responded, oh, thanks for letting me know. I'm sorry that didn't, happen or something. So just trying to follow up with those students that aren't actually maybe participating to the same level you want them to, or that are not attending your class. I just feel like that's an important piece. And then we'll also spend a little bit of time, I reiterate some of the messages that our academic office is sharing with the students. So the ways that they can connect with other students during the week. Some of our MSOE engaged in this amazing phone call campaign the last 2 weeks, where we spread out amongst a lot of people, called every single MSOE student. And some of the feedback we're getting from students was related to those that were doing well were the ones that were in those team chats with their sports group, or they were in a team chat with a club. So I worry about the kids that are not connecting with any of their friends, or old roommates or whatever, the ones that are really isolating themselves. So I think that trying to reiterate the messages that your schools are sharing with the students, because some of those emails get lost, they're not reading them or something like that, sharing those opportunities, even when it's mental health, emotional health. I've shared that information. I think that needs to be normalized. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that.
And Tyra, I think related to that, we know that our engineering students put so much pressure on themselves, and with this unprecedented, transition very suddenly to a world of learning that they're not familiar with, they may engage in varying levels depending on how their own perceptions of their contributions and accomplishments in class are. So if they feel like they are not doing what they should be doing, they might take a back seat and they might not be as engaged. And so one of the things our faculty are trying to communicate with students is the flexibility of expectations, to cut them some slack, to let them know that it's not business as usual with the syllabus that we started with just online. This is different, and the expectations are different, and we're not expecting 100%. And we know that people have different personal challenges and challenges, emotionally and mentally, with dealing with these very different learning environments. And so we're very communicative with our students about understanding that and being flexible with our expectations. And I think when students know that they don't have to put in 100%, and if they can only manage 80% this week, and that's okay, then they're more likely to engage, even though they didn't finish this one assignment, or they didn't quite do it to the degree that they would have normally under regular circumstances. So I think the flexible expectations for the classwork can really build more student engagement.
I think the same is true with faculty as well, because I've been making a lot of these calls to students, and they told us during the first week that they were a little disappointed that the faculty weren't able to harness the medium, the online medium. But the calls that I've made more recently, the students are telling me that they're actually very impressed that the faculty have willingly learned how to morph their teaching styles, their pedagogical approaches into digital learning environments. So it's really interesting to hear how the message among the student body has changed rapidly over the course of the week. And I think that's because the faculty are demonstrating and acting out a willingness to learn how to better communicate with students. When I keep thinking about the silver linings, I have to think about the good that's going to come out of this. And certainly, I think about how I'll have my computer on now whenever I do office hours when we're back on campus, so that my non-traditional students who cannot commute to campus will still be able to interact with me via Microsoft Teams. And I just think about how there's so many new, different ways we can interact with our students. Right now, we're being forced into that medium, but when we are back on our campus and we're able to see each other, how can we take what we're learning from this experience so that we can actually grow how we exchange information with our students? I should probably write a proposal to present at the next Keene conference on that very topic.
Sounds like a plan. There's a couple of different questions that came up in the chat box throughout our conversation. One was around learning styles and how you're engaging. And Rob, I don't know if you want to jump in and and share a little bit more about what you're thinking and that question?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Rob Fletcher. I'm a faculty member, full-time professor at Lawrence Technological University in Southfield, Michigan. And I came from industry and then worked into the university environment. And so one of the things that's really important for me when I teach a class face-to-face is there's probably, depending on who you talk to, there's typically about anywhere from 8 to 15 different kinds of learning styles that students have. And every time I prepare a lecture, every time I sit down to try to come up with an assignment or some type of activity in the class, I try to hit at least 6 or 8 of these different kinds of learning styles. Some people are tactile learners, some people are audio learners, some people are visual learners, some people have to learn by writing. As most of you know the theory on this. And so there's typically, and most people are not just one, sometimes they're 2 or 3 in different times of the day. They might be one type of learner, and another time of the day, they might be a separate different kind of learner. So one of the things that I'm finding a lack of ability to integrate into my teaching style is how to engage or how to address. What I typically do is try to hit half a dozen of these different learning styles in every lecture, in every class session, to make sure that I'm addressing this breadth of learning styles that people have. And I'm finding that the online media, at least the methods that I'm trying to employ, really come up very, very short. I mean, it's almost pathetic in some cases how difficult it is to address these different learning styles. And so I have earbuds here, but I'm all ears to learn and to hear from the group what works. And I've made a list of here, some people are linear learners, some people are holistic learners. They have to see the big picture first before, and all of these kinds of learning styles are going to directly impact how they engage, because that's the conversation here. And so what I'm particularly interested in is hearing or understanding, or maybe even getting some guidance or advice. Like I say, I'm all ears as to addressing the issue of learning style versus engagement, because these are 2 very different things, but they're intermeshed and they're integrated into whether a student's actually going to learn something. And so I'll shut up, and I'd be very interested in hearing what people have to say about this.
Well, I know that some of my colleagues are blending synchronous with asynchronous, and that's working well for them, especially for technically dense material. So if they record a lecture in advance, or even if they record a lecture in real time and then post that recorded lecture after the fact, a number of students have told me that they really appreciate those recordings because they can replay it and replay it and replay it.
And whereas I'm doing that.
Yeah, whereas other students, they just need to hear it once. It's once and done. So I think your willingness to record and to post those recordings goes a long way.
Yeah, Rob, I would just comment that I have the same questions. I feel like, we're all doing our best to try to figure out these different learning environments or learning modes and hit different ones as best we can. But I certainly, I haven't been able to get any great answers other than the things that we've discussed. So it might just be a limitation of this mode, but I'm looking forward to the answers as well, if anybody has any good ideas.
There's a few things that I have done, just to add an additional comment here. We went at Lawrence Tech, we were given, fortunately, an extra week of spring break. Our spring break was the second full week of March, actually the first full week of March, and then we were given an extra week of spring break. And what happened was that gave me the ability to at least transition about 3 weeks of my semester to some type of online format. And so what's happened is now I'm past those 3 weeks, and now I'm having to do almost real time preparing and transitioning these classes. And so what I have had to do, and what I've found works, and I'm not saying this is great. I don't know if it's great yet or not. I'm still trying to figure this out. but our email system is a Google-based email system at Lawrence Tech, and so we can use Google Hangouts. And so what I have encouraged students to do is go into Google Hangouts. A lot of them are very familiar with it. They've already used it to chat with their friends. And so I've had to transition a lot of my individual assignments into some type of group assignment where they can either voluntarily form, or I'll assign them as some sort of group. And so I have them using Google Hangouts, and that's nice because Google Hangouts does have the ability to share screens and that sort of thing. But that's only part of it. So what I'm concerned, I'm seeing a couple of things happen over the past 3 to 4 weeks, especially this week. I am seeing students particularly become seriously disengaged, where they just go, no audio, no visual. And when I'm prodding them or inquiring them, which I do all the time in class, I get almost no response, just like what was mentioned, sounds like one of my classes. And I have given online exams or quizzes, and I'm seeing what would typically historically be, students that are doing well, are doing okay. I'm seeing student performance drop off. I have a series of about 6 or 8 different kinds of exams in classes that I've given, and typically in-class exams, those grades are typically in the 70 to 80, maybe even 90% range over time. And now, as I give these exams to students online, I'm seeing 40s and 50% performances. So I'm seeing a performance degradation. So I'm first of all and foremost concerned about their learning. They need to learn. I teach thermodynamics. And so they got to know this because they're going to be facing, heat transfer and fluid mechanics and all these other things that are going to be critical. And so I'm kind of a cornerstone course that leads into these other classes that are really critical in their academic timeline. So I'm getting some anxiety in my own self about lack of students' performance. I'm just not seeing the performance that I would normally expect.
So Rob, I'll throw another idea out there. It's a lot to put on your shoulders if you're the only person presenting the information. And I know that my students really enjoy watching each other present, because then they get to, be part of the information share. So I've been having the students own pieces of the curriculum and asking them to make YouTube videos, because YouTube for them is really easy. So they'll do a recording on YouTube. I'll post the link in our learning management system, Blackboard, and then I'll say, okay, well, I'll say, Joey, how long is your video? And they'll say, well, 9 minutes. So I'll say, okay, everybody, we're going to reconvene class at 3:25. Let's all jump into Blackboard, watch Joey's video, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So in doing it that way, the students are more engaged because they actually get to present, but not in real time. I think a lot of students are afraid to present in real time, especially if the course is being recorded. So I've had some students tell me that they've rehearsed and re-recorded 5 or 6 times to get it right. And I'm thinking to myself, this is brilliant, because they're really learning, because they want to share the information correctly. And the students are much more engaged watching each other than they are watching me. And it does get more voices in the room in terms of sharing the curriculum. I don't know if you can do that in thermo. I've been able to do that in my ethics class quite successfully.
Yeah, it's harder when you're talking about something as abstract as entropy. And usually when you talk about entropy, their eyes glaze over anyway. So that's a high enough hurdle and a high enough mountain to climb initially as it is. But yeah, I'll see if there's ways to do it. Part of, like you say, it puts more onus on me, but that's the challenge of all of this, is that I'm trying to figure out how to do this myself, and then to expand this to this bigger picture. I felt very comfortable in a classroom face-to-face environment, getting that multi-layer of engagement. But this is, I've in industry before coming to Lawrence Tech, we had international conference calls and all that kind of, but that's information. That's not teaching, and that's not education. transferring information is easy online. That's a snap. That's not hard. The education, the teaching and education, that's the piece that I'm struggling with.
I guess I just had two comments to what you said, Rob, and I appreciate you sharing it out. I guess I'm not surprised to hear that students are not performing at the same level that they're used to. Some of the information that my students have shared with me is, you know, some of their parents have been laid off. They obviously can't study in the same, you know, quiet, calm environments that they're in. It's, I mean, this is just an unbelievable context that we're trying to teach in, you know, so they're distracted, you know, they have people they know who have COVID, you know, I mean, it's a really frightening time. So I guess the other thing I would just say is, like, we're doing the best we can do. Like, and I know I was beating myself up a little bit in the beginning, and then I was like, wait a minute, you're teaching a class on top of a full-time job, trying to do it in this space of whatever room is less quiet. Like, we got to cut ourselves some slack. Yes, I get that we're constantly trying to figure out how to be better, and I love that about all the educators. But, you know, if we're leaving things in Blackboard for them to look at later, you know, that's huge, you know, because sometimes when we were teaching face-to-face, some people didn't do that, you know. So I think we're learning a lot of really great tools that'll help us when we're back face-to-face. But I think that empathy piece, you know, is huge. So maybe even an email to a couple students, just, you know, saying, hey, Dave, I noticed, you know, I haven't heard you speaking as much in class. I love it when I hear from you, you know, I look forward to seeing you Monday and hope you're in a place where you can maybe contribute more. So I don't know, you know, I'm just trying to think of.
To build on that, there's one thing that's been really helpful for me is kind of breaking it into 3 different categories, the things that are in front of us and the things that we can control. You know, what's kind of the immediate, which is a lot of what we're working on right now. It's very reactionary. You know, we weren't expecting to be in this situation. Many of us were halfway through a course, and then now all of a sudden we're in a totally different environment than we anticipated. It wasn't like we planned for this ahead of time. And in some cases, they were halfway through physical projects and capstones or other things, and now they don't have access to, you know, there's all kinds of interesting things that are being tossed at us. So, you know, for me, what's been helpful is thinking about that immediate, and then kind of what can we do in the short term, and what should we be doing in the long term, from, you know, what are we learning that we can really apply and change the way that we are teaching, you know, more holistically based upon what we're learning through all of this. And I think that's, you know, something that would really, you know, gives us a little bit of, or at least gives me a little bit of comfort in knowing that, you know, there's only so much that we all can do in one given day or in one given week or in one given month. But if some of these ideas that are coming up, you know, let's not lose those opportunities. Let's kind of put those together in kind of short-term, long-term opportunities that maybe could or should be explored further. Just generically. And one other item that I wanted to share, and I'll post it into the discussion forum, and just want to remind that we are capturing this, we're recording this session. We're going to be posting it in the group, the subnet on Engineering Unleashed, and then there'll be a discussion on there. So if you have additional conversations, you know, please subscribe to that, and then you can capture and see what other people are posting. But one thing I'll post that reminded me of something that was mentioned by a couple of you already was those check-ins with the teams and the students. And FSG, a pretty reputable consulting organization, has a team status check that they do at the beginning of their large meetings, and they use red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and gray to represent kind of imminent overload to very busy, juggling many priorities, busy, lots of things to do, but managing, you know, keep an eye out for signs. You know, so there's like these different ways you can kind of organize where you are, all the way to, you know, some students might be bored and feeling unproductive and wishing that they had more to do. Right? So there's going to have a variation of where students might be coming in, or teammates, your colleagues might be coming in. So I'll share that if it's useful as well.
Can I share my experience with you?
Yes.
I'm Abdelrahman Shuaib. I'm a professor of practice at Arizona State University, ASU, Tempe, Arizona. And I teach capstone courses for the mechanical engineering department. And we were in our spring break, and usually we offer the capstone in 2 courses. The first course is mainly design, and the second course, students do their final critical design review, detailed design, and then they start ordering parts for manufacturing their prototypes. So we require all teams to manufacture prototypes for the project they're working on. So usually students start just before the spring break and during spring break to manufacture their prototypes. So when this COVID showed up, unfortunately, we had to stop. So we froze all their manufacturing. We froze all their testing, to try to follow the social distancing. And nobody could meet with nobody. So we just decided, when the second semester started, we decided to continue without manufacturing. Unfortunately, students were really very disappointed, because manufacturing the prototype and seeing their work in physical sense was one of the best things they usually have. And we, in the final presentations, which is used for ABIT assessment outcomes, usually is one of the requirements. So they were disappointed, but I tried to comfort them that, well, it's nobody's fault. And I gave them some real stories. My professor at Capstone also told us his story. He was finishing his PhD dissertation, and 1 or 2 days before that, the Nazis came and bombed the university in Vienna, Austria. So he had to defend his thesis 4 years later. Okay. Then my experience also, at my 2 weeks before our finals, when I was in college, due to some political strife, university was closed, and we had to have our finals 6 months later. So I tried to convince, and they were, they took it nicely, and they are now, all of them appreciate the thing. We did something very interesting, of course, for us, we're using Canvas and Zoom. We were able nicely to transition to those with some glitches here and there. And one interesting thing is we did a design review online. Teams have to, a design review is about manufacturing and testing, which they did not have all the information, but it went nice. Another interesting thing is working from a distance. We have some students actually were asked by their countries to go abroad, and have teams who are working with students who are in the Gulf countries, So the time difference is 10 hours. Our class is 12 noon here, and they start there about 10 p.m. and they go up to 1 a.m. to finish our class. And they're doing fine. I think everybody is doing fine. So we are about 2 weeks away to finish our semester. Teams are doing their best to try to complete their writing their reports and meeting all the requirements, except the things which have been frozen. So this is one of the really nice experiences. Students took it easy, but of course, the difference is this is the second course. So we were together I was together with the teams since it's about almost 1 year now. So there is no problem knowing each other. We had some technical issues here and there, because some teams also, there's a difference between their capabilities. Sometimes laptops do not have all features we are looking for. But I just assure you that we were very lucky to to continue on our capstone teams. I have 25 teams actually, which is about 147 students. I have 2 classes, one is 100 students, the other is 47. So no major issues. We are hoping, and they're working very hard to complete their project. They have one final presentation to be made, and again, it's going to be online. One problem I had with the Zoom was we had problems breaking them into teams. So what they did is they asked them, okay, go ahead, create your own meeting invitation and include me in there. And I was able to communicate with them, all the teams online, and it went fine. The important thing, which now we are hoping that nothing will, major problem will show up in the final presentations, but the design review of the testing and manufacturing gave us some kind of training to be able to at least be ready for whatever we can. So this is the major things. And I think we're not sure about what will happen in the next year, but at least we were able to absorb this shock. And it's a big class, but students are very understanding, and they're able to absorb the situation. And I think I will stop here. If you have any more questions, I will answer that. Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing. And I think that's the beauty of these in general, these conversations, right? I mean, none of us all have all the answers. And so we're all living different experiences, and those experiences are hopefully going to help us all see things that we didn't see before, and be able to kind of act into that. So I really appreciate, there was a whole slew of fantastic, kind of tips and tricks, and just shared, hopefully, experience and that was able to kind of be shared today. I'll try to capture some of that too and post it into the discussion forum so people can see that. And I did want to take and kind of a note from Dave and one of the things that you said, and maybe we could all unmute and give a little round of applause for everyone here. Dave, Kristin, Tyra, thank you.
Well, we're going to applaud all of you back, because we are all doing the best we can, which is all we can do right now. So keep up the good work.
If you have additional ideas, I mean, these were birthed out of conversations that you all and that we've already done around virtual capstone, around virtual labs, around just more generically, how do we shift to teaching in a virtual environment? But there's a lot of other things that people are asking about. So if you have ideas or thoughts, either share them here in the chat window, or there's also a survey that was part of that's part of that subnet where you can share your ideas or thoughts for additional sessions, and we can hopefully pull people together to talk about those. So if you have additional pain points, different ideas or opportunities, let's all rally around those and support one another as we're all, in these unprecedented times. So thank you all, and appreciate all that you're doing. Stay positive.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, take good care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yep. Stay safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Have a good weekend.